Hey, it's Dr. Johnson, and I have another primary source activity for you called Crop It. This is an activity that will help students see details within a larger picture. You can use this with primary source photographs, images, posters, anything visual, even written text you could use this activity with. So for this activity, you are going to need two things. First of all, you're going to need your primary source, and I would recommend Photograph. Photograph is usually the easiest as you're learning to do Crop It. Now, I have some of yours here on the screen, and I have mine. Remember, when you use a primary source photograph, when you print it out, and you will need to print this one out, you need to have a physical copy of yours. Print it out as large as possible. Mine fills up this whole page. Another helpful teacher hint, if you're going to use these primary source documents class after class, laminate them. It'll help them last longer. So pause the video if you don't have your primary source printed out. Go print it out, and when you're ready, restart the video. All right, the second thing you're going to need is you're going to need a Crop It tool. Now, you can find a PDF of a Crop It tool like what you see on the screen on the Canvas website. It's on the page called Strategy:*Crop It. Or, it's really simple because all it really is two L's. So I've just taken an 8.5 by 11 inch piece of paper, cut out two gigantic L's from it, and that is your Crop It tool. So you can see why this works really well, really easy to make in a classroom. If you use the document that I have available on Canvas, you're going to have a little rectangular piece in the middle that kind of gives the summary of Crop It. So get yourself a Crop It tool. It does not matter how you do it, but have that one ready to go along with your primary source document. Pause the video now, and when you're ready with your tool and your primary source document, then hit continue. All right, before we get moving in, Crop It works really well with individual students because each student can have their own Crop It tool. And Crop It tools are great. Also, when you use Crop It, the basic outcomes of Crop It is it's going to be an introduction activity. It's going to get students introduced to a primary source because they're going to learn how to generate and support their ideas that they have about that. They're going to learn how to make interpretations and how to make claims about what they see. So let's get started, shall we? And so for me to get started, I've got my primary source. I'm going to tilt that down so you can see it. And I'm going to ask you a Crop It question. Every Crop It question is really easy. It starts with crop to. So crop to the part of your primary source image that catches your eye first. So just as an example, here's me. When I first looked at this primary source image, I've got to get my Crop It tool. The area that caught my eye first, I'm going to narrow it down, is this right here. I noticed that this person with the flag, that's what really caught my eye first. So you, with your primary source, crop it to what catches your eye first. If you need to pause the video to do that, pause and then hit continue when you're ready. If not, think about why did that catch your eye first? Why did you notice that first? This is part of the analysis that you want to get students thinking about. Let me jump in. Here's another Crop It question. Crop to an area that shows who or what the image is about. This one might be a little bit harder. So in your primary source document, what's the area that shows who or what your image is about? At this point, I might have students talk to each other. I might pair students up and say, show your document and explain why you chose that area. Why is that person or thing that you selected important? Have students talk to each other about that. You could call on individual students if you wanted to explain to the class their document and what area they did. You could also show a document underneath a document camera connected to your video projector and have students crop in with the video camera to show the whole class. And by the way, this Crop It question, who or what, you can always prompt your students to look at different things like, what details are in there that show who or what something's about. And one of the details about who is, is there a famous person there? Is there a location? Is there some sort of clothing? Are there, identifying badges or things? So those are the type of things the students might be looking for. All right, let's move on to another crop it question. Get your crop it tool ready. Get your primary source all ready to go. And I would like you to crop to a clue that shows where the image takes place. So you're focusing on where. So use your crop it tool. Get it on your document and crop down to where this image takes place. And by the way, if you're not quite sure where, there are some clues that show us where, and those clues are maybe there's a landmark, maybe there's a building or a sign, maybe there's even a name on something. So once again, if you need to pause this video right now to focus in on the area of where this takes place, then do that and restart the video when you're ready. So hopefully you're seeing that these crop it questions are really kind of open-ended. Like this one, crop to a clue that shows when the image takes place. So that might be a little bit harder in your primary source document. So you might need to look at things like, the time of day, like is there a clock, is there the sun, can you tell based off a tree, is it a specific season, can you tell by the technology, the type of car maybe, or the type of clothes people are wearing. So this when is a really interesting crop it question. Let's go to one last crop it question. Crop to an area that shows tension or a problem. You may not have this in your primary source. So as a teacher, you have to be aware, is this a good question to use? Because problem and tension areas are going to be, might be an expression on someone's face. It might be a weapon. It might be disrepair or damage in a building. So when you're using these, you have to get the right type of crop it questions for your students to focus in on. And speaking of crop it questions, I need to tell you that effective crop it questions always start with broad. They're easy to answer, and then you can start focusing down on more narrow things based off of the type of primary sources that you're using with your students. And crop it questions definitely have no right or wrong answers. If you write a crop it question that has a specific answer, it's not a good crop it question. Because you want your students to interpret. You want them to make some big decisions on how they look at a document initially and what they start thinking about. Because remember, this is an introductory activity, not a find the right or wrong answer activity. If you need more crop it questions, there's a great link on Canvas. It gives you some more crop it questions you might want to think about. Let's show you some examples of some good and bad crop it questions. Here's a great one, a Waikiki. A great crop it question would be, show the most important part. Crop to an area that shows the most important part. So put your crop it question right there on the screen. And what's the most important part of this photo of Waikiki? And really, I think even more importantly, why is that a good crop it question? And hopefully as you think about that, you think, oh, it's a good crop it question because it's broad. There's no right or wrong answer. Students can interpret this in a lot of different ways, and then they can start formulating good reasoning for why they chose that area. All right, let's take a look at another crop it question about Waikiki. Crop to the area that shows Diamond Head. Why is that a bad crop it question? Hopefully you're thinking, oh, it's bad because it has a right or wrong answer. There is only one Diamond Head area there. So good crop it questions, once again, remember, do not have a yes or no or a right or wrong answer. So bad crop it question. Can you think of a better crop it question for this particular photograph, by the way? What would you say? Crop to show... There's lots of different answers here. What's a great crop it question that you could make for your students? This might be a great one to crop to show when this photograph took place. Because look at the swimming suits. They're great clues. Look at that guy standing with his hat on. By the way, a bad crop it question would be crop to the area that shows the man in the hat. Bad crop it question. That's a right or wrong answer. So remember, crop it questions are big and broad. No right or wrong answers. Here's a great crop it question. Crop to an area that you have a question about. Maybe you've already cropped it down to that man in the hat. Maybe you've cropped it down to that building at the end of the pier. Maybe you've cropped to the pier itself. And maybe your question is, hey, does that pier still exist? Now, this is a great crop it question because it allows students to say, to show an area of something they want to know more about. And then also to be a historian now and, how can I figure out what the answer to my question is? So, to review, what are the important things to remember about Crop It? Remember that it works with individual students. You have to physically have a document there in front of you. It's kind of hard to crop on a giant screen, but to have a document in front of you is really easy. Remember that it's important to have broad questions with no right or wrong answer because you're allowing students to interpret and then support their interpretation with evidence. So what type of photographs or documents work best with Crop It? Something interesting to think about. What are the details? What are the important things that students learn through doing Crop It? And then how might you as a teacher use Crop It effectively? All right, so there's another activity in your primary source tool shed. I hope it's been useful for you.